Hi there, I'm Abby. I'm with LDV Capital. We invest in deep technical people building visual technology businesses. We thrive on collaborating with teams at the pre-seed and seed stage that leverage computer vision, machine learning, and artificial intelligence in order to analyze visual data. Thanks so much for tuning into our series, The Women Leading Visual Tech. The purpose of our series is to highlight some of the top ladies whose work in visual technologies are revolutionizing business and society. In this episode, I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing Dr. Michal Lipson. Dr. Lipson is the Eugene Higgins Professor at Columbia University. Her research focus is on nanophotonics. Dr. Lipson has pioneered critical building blocks in the field of silicon photonics, which today is recognized as one of the most promising directions for solving the major bottlenecks in microelectronics. She is the inventor of over 30 issued patents and has co-authored more than 200 scientific publications. In recognition of her work in silicon photonics, she was elected as a member of the National Academy of Sciences. She's also been awarded the NAS Comstock Prize in Physics, the MacArthur Fellowship, the Blavatnik Award, the Optical Society's R.W. Wood Prize, the IEEE Photonics Award, and has received an honorary degree from Trinity College at the University of Dublin. Since 2014, every year, she's been named by Thomson Reuters as a top 1% highly cited researcher in the field of physics. She's also one of our experts at LDV Capital. Thanks again for tuning in. Give it a listen. Tell us what you think. We hope you enjoy it just as much as I did. All right, so Michal, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to chat with you.
Same here. Thanks for taking the time.
All right, so the first thing that I have to start with is, what is it like to be called an official genius? And how many times have you used that card on your kids or husband when they're not listening to you?
A lot. I tell them, hey, I'm officially a genius.
I love that.
Actually, I think for women, seriously, it's very meaningful.
Absolutely. How many women have been awarded the MacArthur grant in photonics in particular?
In photonics, I know of at least one more, but I think the point here is that in sciences, women are not often called what men are very often called, kind of the genius. Oh, he's a genius. He's there's a lot of these kind of adjectives that usually do not belong to a woman. So that's kind of
very cool. It's very, very cool. And for all the people out there who are tuning in, when you were describing silicon photonics, like to your kids when they were little, how did you tell them what your job was?
So I tell them that I do optics, that I work with optics, but I don't use lenses or fibers. I use tiny little electronic chips.
And so that's like one of the reasons why at LDV we focus on visual technologies. And so that's why we think of silicon photonics as a very critical visual technology for the future, because essentially it's everything behind all semiconductors and the way that they work, and generating, detecting, and analyzing light.
Exactly. It's all about light, but now instead of actually making, for example, a lens and then another lens and putting them together and building a setup, no, you just print your setup. Yeah. You kind of fabricate thousands of little lenses that are all on a little chip, and you massively produce them the same way that electronics is produced.
Incredible. And when you're talking about little chips, you're talking about like the size of your fingertip.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
What made you start to focus on photonics? I know you come from a physics background, so when exactly did like your journey into photonics begin?
Yes, so photonics is a wonderful field in that sense, because it really brings together physics and engineering. You need the physics to actually do the innovations, the real jumps in new ideas, new technologies. And the engineering, you need to make sure that you have those ideas, but stay grounded in actual engineering systems that are based on that. So it's a beautiful combination. So I have students that are physicists and engineers.
And so how do you, like, could you give an example of like one of the bridges that you've had to build between your physics students and your engineering students in order to get to a really interesting outcome?
All students, no matter what their background, they should be able to do the same research. But everybody comes with a little bit different ideas. So I had an interesting case where a student came with a very heavy physics background, and he was able to come up with ideas that are based on quantum physics, nothing to do with optics, but just drawing analogies. And then he came to my group that are much more engineering focused, much more applied, and drawing on his ideas, we were able to engineer a full system that had, that for example, was one of the applications are for LiDAR, where the size of the beam is gigantic, much larger than traditional beams that you can build, and it was based on an idea that kind of was borrowed from basic quantum physics.
Very interesting. And so what would be like the applications of something like that, like a much wider beam than current?
Yeah, so wider beam is very, very important because the wider it is, the straighter and less diffractive, meaning that you lose less of the light. And that's very, very important for any long-range application. Like, for example, you want to beam a light a kilometer away, or you want to maybe detect. You want to use that light as your sensor.
Yeah.
Or maybe you want to project light, but you don't want the light to diffract.
Gotcha. And what's the current range right now? So 1 kilometer away sounds incredibly far compared to what a lot of the applications that we've seen.
Right. But I think it's absolutely possible. I think our company is absolutely working towards that. Right now, we are tens of meters, and I think 1 kilometer is not a far-fetched.
Very interesting. Very cool. So, I mean, I guess that has tons of implications across many industries, just on the LiDAR side of things. But as photonics in general, at our last Vision Summit, I heard you talk a little bit about your overview onto what the implications would be for many different industries. But what are the largest industries that you see right now that are going to be impacted by Silicon Photonics over the next decade?
Right now, it's being introduced in data centers. Anything to do like Amazon, Facebook, all these very large data centers, they are all hiring Silicon Photonics folks like crazy. And that's because they want to introduce Silicon Photonics into data centers. Because the whole goal is to decrease the power dissipation, the heat that is produced by computing. So
that's possible. That Silicon Photonics is going to be able to change the way that the actual computers are able to generate.
Absolutely, that's real. That's real. That's already there. So that's an enormous industry. I think the LiDAR industry, that's a completely different industry. But LiDAR autonomous vehicles, robotics, that's a very, very big one. And as Silicon Photonics progresses, we're going to see those systems, like the LiDAR systems, being introduced in, being miniaturized and introduced into devices like the iPhones.
Yeah.
So, and then, the market we'll forget about it. And we're talking about sensors, basically. This is sensing for any, these are 3D sensors, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, so I think that one of the applications that you're talking about is actually Voyant Photonics, which is one of our portfolio companies, and you're an advisor. They came out of your lab, correct?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and it's what LiDAR and a chip that we see eventually being on the fingertips of every robot that's out there, and in a variety of different use cases.
They're very excited about it. Yes, I think they're doing a tremendous job. Yeah.
What do you think that this means for business and society as a whole, as photonics starts to take a larger role in compute power and autonomous vehicles and all of these different things? What do you think are going to be some of the biggest implications that we see for us as humans sitting in our homes?
I think, look, eventually it all trickles down to us. So when we talk about, for example, data center, it all boils down to actual uh, uh, streaming AI. Most of the reason why you need such powerful and gigantic data centers is because of the explosions of AI. So I think photonics really um, will enable AI in our life. And that goes from the sensors.
Mm-hmm.
This is LiDAR, but there are also many others that we're working on, chemical sensors, and down to the actual the, computing. So it's really enabling, if you want to, one big sector that really encompasses all is AI is a good one.
Very cool. Maybe it's just because of the Big Bang Theory, but in general, physics has this reputation of kind of being a man's world.
Yeah.
Have you found that to be the case throughout your career as you're building up this stellar reputation in your field?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think physics and engineering in general is an absolutely male dominated. And unfortunately, I don't think there has been much change. You know, I've been in it for 20 plus years. I haven't seen.
Really interesting. So, like, out of all of the students in your lab, what's the ratio of women to men at the moment?
So, the, in my case, about 30%. But
That's fantastic.
students, so yes, there has been much more students, graduate students in um, uh, in the labs, absolutely. But when you look at the principal investigators, we go to these meetings where actually they, these are big stakes with the funding or just being out there looking for those head of laboratories is completely male dominated.
That's really interesting. Do you think that there's one thing in particular that you've really had to overcome in order to get to your role that other men who are now in your role haven't had to see?
Yes, I think I don't know even how to start. I mean, obviously, I think absolutely. I don't think it's a question of time. I think more and more women will see that there are other women, and life is fun for them, and and then I think there will be more and more of those. So hopefully there will be the change will trickle up to the leaders in the field. And regarding the things that I overcame, look, when you start as a woman, you are looked with a magnifying glass. So everything you do, if it's good, they will say, "Oh, she is fantastic." And if it's not that good, but maybe not that bad objectively, they will say, "Told you." Very, very exaggerated.
Yeah.
So you really have to. I felt that the solution for that is to be way above the bar, aim for the way above the bar, so that there are no questions there.
Yeah, it was funny. I saw a cartoon the other day that was it looked like 4 people on a track, and 2 of them were women and 2 of them were men. And it kind of had, like your route to career success. And the men's track was like basically all open, maybe with like 1 hurdle or 2. And the women's track had like 12 different hurdles, them being like laundry and kids and drop off and food and all these other things. And so not only from like a research perspective and an academic perspective is your work looked at with such detail, but then also from, like a home life balance perspective. It just seems there's so much that people are trying to balance, and scientists have been talking about recently how it's been incredibly challenging for them.
Yeah, yeah. I think regarding balance of life and career, I think so. In general, men were in physics and engineering first, like they were here first, and they kind of determined the rules, and we now are trying to adjust. Then eventually, probably will change. But the rules of society and of science in general is that are such that it's very, very hard for us to work with them. I mean, to be a top scientist and go home and do laundry and take care of the kids by myself, that's not possible. So these rules have to be changed. Those perceptions that these are roles that are meant for women, these needs to be changed.
I love that. It's so nice to hear, because I definitely feel that, like in our front, is that things are really starting to change, and so it's great that it's hitting into all different sectors as well, and fields.
Yeah.
And besides just being, a stellar scientist and award-winning professor, you're also an entrepreneur. So you founded PicoLuz, right? And you're also the advisor to a couple of different startups, including Voyant, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
How did you decide to make the jump from academia to entrepreneurism?
That was actually, so Silicon Photonics was a natural bait for that, was a natural transition, because it's as opposed to a lot of the stuff that we do in academia, where we develop an amazing thing and then we ask, hey, but what is it good for? Photonics was really was a goal, where the industry really needed it and wanted it. And so as soon as we started coming up with solutions, hey, we can guide light on a chip. We can change it, we can switch it, we can control it, we can actually make circuits of light on the same chip that electronic folks use. Then immediately the industry started asking, oh my God, we want to do this, we want to do that. And we said, wait a minute, we should do that as well, right? Instead of just letting others run with that. And that was part of the fun. And a lot of it was student motivated. They wanted to go out there, and we said, yeah, let's do that.
That's nice. It's great that you have the ability to support them as they want to go about commercializing an aspect of what they've been working on for you, especially if it is such, a problem solver for so many aspects of industry.
Exactly.
Have you seen the Facebooks and the Googles scooping up a lot of your students in order to do these data centers like you were talking about?
Yes. No, so a lot. I mean, I keep getting emails asking for students to come and do internship, and industry coming and just giving, offering to just visit for a day. And I know, and that's fine. That's great. It's wonderful.
Would you, at this point in time, if you were them, would you go the big tech route, or would you stick with the entrepreneurism startup side of things?
Sorry, I lost you. So would I continue in academia?
Well, yeah. So if you were them at this point in time, and you've got Facebooks and Googles and all these big tech companies coming in to try to take you, do you think that you would go the big tech route, or do you think that you would go still into startups and entrepreneurism?
Yeah, that's a good question. You mean for students that are graduating, where should they go? I see everything. I see students going anywhere from academia. They wanna do the same, or going to those very large labs, industry labs, and wanting to start a startup. So it's really a mix.
Good.
And I could see, yeah, I think startup is not for the faint of heart or heart. To do it, you have to have a certain personality to actually, be completely embedded and just do that.
Absolutely. Is there any type of, what's the largest challenge that you've faced as part of a startup that you've had to overcome?
So I never actually left my job in academia and went full time to startup. That's a real, I salute those that do that. But I was heavily involved in all these steps. With Voyant, the recent one, because that's fresh in my mind, setting up the path so that we can have the shortest path, but the highest impact is always kind of a balance. Because Silicon Photonics can do everything, can do a lot, but it does take time to develop. And that's kind of a balance that we're always looking for.
Yeah, finding the time and the money and the that it takes to develop something. It's always so important to figure out what are the bites that you can take at the moment, because you can take that bite to chew, as opposed to looking at where everything that it can possibly do under the sun. That makes sense. I think so. One question that I'm trying to ask everybody to sign off is, if you were going to give one sentence to yourself of advice to yourself as a 12-year-old girl who's getting to embark on a career in the world of physics and photonics, what advice would you give her?
So I have a laundry list of advices. So maybe I can pick. Try to pick one or two. So the perhaps the most important advice that I got was to be courageous. Meaning not follow, don't necessarily follow the crowd. If you have an idea but you believe in that, make sure that you believe in that, truly believe, then be courageous. It's okay, it's gonna pay off. It's much more scary not to go with the crowd, but it's okay. And maybe the second advice is that whatever topic you choose to work with, the more objective metrics it has, the easier for you to kind of claim your success without relying on politics or on the need to be, whether you are a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. If there is a metric, a quantitative metric, say, for example, a kilometer away, whatever, demonstrate a circuit of light that works with 1 volt, I don't know, whatever it is. Choose those high stakes that are quantitative, so that no one can argue with that.
Indisputable evidence.
Yes.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your advice and some of your stories about your career successes with us, and really look forward to talking to you again very soon. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.